G'day, g'day, how you going? What do you know? We'll strike a light. G'day, g'day, and how you going? Just say g'day, 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 and you'll be right.
Now we come to the portion of the service before we do our Bible study that we address some end times news and trends that are happening around the world as it relates to Bible prophecy. Major events going on, more or less disaster that's happening throughout Israel with all these wildfires. It was set by arson. They don't know who the perpetrators are. There's a report that came out of the Interior Ministry who went on his Twitter account thinking that someone who doesn't deserve to be in Israel or the land doesn't belong to you. So he's putting blame on an Arab or a Palestinian. But we don't know who that is at this point. But there's major fires, about 200 that are going on. And there's about 75,000 people that are displaced that had to leave Haifa area. So all their houses are being burned down to major buildings and other things like that. And then we also see it was a really neat phone call because Benjamin Netanyahu was asking for foreign assistance, and the Palestinian Authority had put in some help as well. And so there was a phone call that Benjamin Netanyahu gave to a boss, thanking him for providing some help and relief, So in the midst of tragedy, you can still work through situations like this and not be enemies, even though there's a war going on between ideology, between the two of them. But it was really gracious on both parts of Benjamin Netanyahu thanking him, but it was also graceful on a boss's part to provide or to send relief and help in that area. But again, these arsons is an act of terrorism as well, because you can see how much destruction is going to happen and disaster and distraction that happens. As that's going on, other things can be developing on at the same time. Speaking of terrorism, Iran warns retaliation if U.S. breaches nuclear deal. So extending U.S. sanctions on Iran for 10 years would breach the Iranian nuclear agreement. Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khomeini said on Wednesday, warning that Tehran would retaliate if the sanctions were approved. And so that's kind of coming up. It expires at the end of 2016. So whether the House of Congress and Senate approve this next deal. But if the latest sanctions for the next 10 years, if it happens, the Islamic Republic would definitely react to it. And that may not be a pretty sight if Iran responds in a retaliation way upon the U.S. But it still has to go through the legislation and the House of Representatives and things like that. Also speaking of the U.S., Khalid Sheikh Mohammed revealed in Al-Qaeda's plan to destroy U.S. through immigration. So this came out of several different websites that talk about, there was a book that was released by a CIA operative who was a contractor, James Mitchell, and he was interrogating Al-Qaeda leaders and alleges that their plan was not to destroy U.S. military, but to use the lax immigration law for weak politicians and procreation to take down the nation. As we mentioned before, the Islamic invasion. So if they can't do it through military actions, they're going to do it through going through the immigration system. And so what the Muhammad said, that the terror attacks were good, but the practical way of defeating America was through immigration and the outbreeding of non-Muslims. And under the Obama administration, the increase of how many Muslims came into America was astronomical. And if Hillary Clinton, praise the Lord, she didn't get in, but she would increase that number by 550% increase with the Muslim population. Also speaking of migration, this one was kind of very interesting how this came about. It came out of an Italian journal, but the head of the Italian Interior Minister declares to citizens, you will surrender your homes to Muslims or you will be prosecuted and sent to jail. So Alenjo Alfano said that he plans to take your house and give it to Muslims and arrest you if you say no. So there was a report a few days ago out of the Italian government that seized a hotel from an elderly owner and wanted to give it to the Muslims. But thanks to the assistance of local police and the Catholic League to help him revoke the order. So now the head of the Italian Interior Ministry had released that there will be confiscating real estate from ordinary Italians by eminent domain and creating enforcement agents to seize property, arrest, prosecute, and jail anybody who opposes it. That's a dictatorship. That is a helpless situation for the city. It doesn't matter. You can't do anything about it. The government's going to come in and take over your homes if you don't give in to what they want. That's an absurd agenda. It's scary, but this is what a lot of governments will end up doing. Speaking of an absurd agenda, and we'll finish on this, most of you read and heard the dictator, Fidel Castro, passed away the other day. And many are celebrating. Tragic that he doesn't know Christ. And he went into a Christless eternity. But he led a rebel army to victory in Cuba to embrace a Soviet-style communism that defiled world powers. Up to 10 presidents during a half a century rule. And with his shaking voice, his brother, Raul Castro, who took over, said that his brother died at 10:29 p.m. on Friday, and he announced shouting the revolutionary slogan that he started, his brother, towards victory always. So his commitment to socialism was starting to unwaver as more people woke up to the disaster of what socialism and communism does toward the mid-2016 when he started to get really sick. And then he handed the presidency over to his brother Raul. And socialism or death, as Castro is saying, a rally cry. Even a Western-style democracy swept the globe and other communist regimes in China and Vietnam, how they've more or less starting to embrace capitalism, leaving the island of 11 million people economically crippled, the Marxist curiosity. And again, any place where you go where there's communism, it's been absolute disaster. The philosophy of Marxism, communism, socialism is an empty, divisive, destructive, despairing way of life and hope for a government. And it's just, you see not only economic problems with there, but food problems. You see what's happening in Venezuela. That is a communistic type of government as well, socialism. It does not work. It might have a great idea, this whole utopia. Everyone gets along. Everyone has the same amount of pay. There's no, difference there like what happened in capitalism. But by the way, if you want to see the millions of people, there was close to 94 million people within the last century that died under communism rule. And from China, Soviet Union, North Korea, Afghanistan, and Eastern Europe, quite a few countries there, trumped the 28 million that died under fascist regimes during the same period. For example, like what happened in Germany. But during the century, measured more than people died as a result of communism, from homicide, which was 58 million, genocide 30 million put together, combined with the death tolls of World War I, which was 37 million, and World War II, which is 66 million, so that exceeded communism by 9 million. But you see the disaster, the destruction, and there's many people within our fellowship here that can talk about what it was like in Romania or Hungary and Eastern Europe of the disaster that communism was. And there's amazing stories in how people came to faith in those countries. How, for example, one of the best stories to read is Brother Andrew and how he snuck into some of these countries and smuggled Bibles to share Christ. The underground churches there. And so those who lived in those countries that was governed by communism, they experienced such devastation of life. And but this is a time, again, for praying for the people in Cuba, praying for other people around the world that have embraced this dark ideology. But it's an opportunity to preach the gospel and to plant churches as doors are opening all over the place. So that's what we need to see. Whenever you see these sort of things taking place, it's an opportunity. Here's a strategic thing that we can be praying for. So when you read these news items in the newspaper or magazines, use that as an opportunity to pray that people would be impacted for the gospel. Amen? That concludes today's update.